You know, in all the years I've done this channel, I don't think I've actually covered the polygraph, which is a big tool of pseudoscience. There's not the least bit of reality to it. It's just a little, high-tech prop that they can use to psychologically manipulate you. And I think I might have mentioned it from time to time, but I've never really had an opportunity to actually go in and properly debunk it. Well, now, Reason has a review of Tremors in the Blood by, I'm going to mess this up, Amit Katwala, which is just unreliable technologies in the criminal justice system. And this article from Katrina Gulliver is, lie detectors are junk science, but we keep using them. Yeah, because they don't care if it's good science or not. They just care if it lets them put people behind bars. Who cares if they're innocent or not? So she points out, simply being questioned by the police might make a suspect flustered or nervous and give the impression of being untruthful. And that can be a problem because you hook up someone to a polygraph and their blood pressure spikes because you're accusing them of stuff. So generally the way they do it is they hook you up to this thing, and it's all sorts of things. It's your blood pressure, it's the electrical resistance in your skin, it's, pulse rate, all sorts of things. And they start off asking you a series of control questions. And in these control questions, it's like, what's your name? How old are you? Things like that. And then they start asking you, did you kill so-and-so? Well, of course you're going to be more nervous, when they start asking you that, but they can interpret it however they want. If they're more inclined to think you're innocent, they could say, oh, well, who wouldn't be a little nervous when asked that? But if they want a reason to think you're guilty, even when you're not, they'll go, ha-ha, look at that. Yeah, he was lying, so. But it could be all sorts of reasons. They could just be afraid of being accused of something they didn't do. They could be afraid that the polygraph isn't working properly. Just hearing the question could trigger something. If you ask someone about a murder, and that person knew someone in their life who was murdered, that might trigger that memory. So there are so many reasons other than guilt that might explain these changes in a polygraph reading. So why would someone think that, in this particular case, it's lying and not any of these other reasons? So. And of course, people who were given polygraphs tended to panic. They also tended to confess to all sorts of offenses, from card games to illegal alcohol, separate from the crimes under investigation. They just start confessing to everything under the sun. Because it's psychological manipulation. And that's all it is. So they go into the case of Henry Wilkins. When he was subjected to a test in front of a crowd of onlookers, Wilkins passed. He passed the lie detector. That means he's being truthful, right? Well, in the eyes of the polygraph boosters, the device had failed, or was failed in being applied incorrectly. Yeah, it couldn't be that he was actually innocent or anything. Or it couldn't be that just, the idea of a polygraph is BS. Wilkins was acquitted, and the San Francisco Police Department swore off lie detectors. Sadly, not all of them did. And polygraphs have been declared to be inadmissible in court, but they've also said, well, they can use them during interrogations. They can't use the results of it in court, but yeah, they can use it to try and get a confession out of someone or whatever. So, and this is all about how I've talked about this many times before with so many other things. So much about law enforcement is about shiny things to show in front of a jury. And So this article mentions the era had already brought the telephone and the radio. What new magic could be next? And that's what's really it's all about. So the mirage of an accurate, efficient, and peaceful truth finder held an understandable appeal. The same impulse led investigators to try and then abandon various forms of truth serum over the decades. But the lie detector is just the 20th century version of witch pricking, revealing a truth that isn't there. The National Academy of Sciences has dismissed the polygraph's validity, and the American Psychological Association says there is little evidence that it works. And in fact, there have been a lot of controlled scientific studies done on it over the last several decades, and it's basically no better than guessing. It could not do any better than just people guessing whether someone was lying or not. And the article mentions Fry v. United States in 1923. The D.C. Appeals Court held that any scientific methods deployed in the courtroom had to be widely accepted by experts, which polygraphs were not. But this inadmissibility didn't stop it from catching on or from gaining acceptance in the public mind. Millions of tests are given in the United States every year, and it is used on anyone from suspected criminals by the FBI to suspected baby daddies by Maury Povich. Yeah, the Maury Povich thing is just a bunch of theater. They even mention a case of how Baltimore police fooled suspects by claiming a Xerox machine was a lie detector. They preloaded it with paper saying truth or lie and just hit the print button when their target answered a question. The rattled suspect thought the jig was up. So you just load it into, you go ahead and print truth and lie on a bunch of pieces of paper. And then when you do it, if you wanted to show he's telling you the truth, like what is your name, you load in the truth paper into the tray, hit print, it comes out truth. But if you want him to think he's registered a lie, the machine's registered a lie, you just put the lie paper in. It's like, oh, see, you lied, I got a high-tech now. And it causes people to confess, and you might think, well, that's a good thing, right? The bad guys confess. Well, the problem is good guys confess, too. It's psychological bullying. And just like with torture, you'll say whatever you think you have to say in order to get it to stop. So, and I mean, any tool for psychological intimidation is going to result in all sorts of false confessions. And just ask any stage mentalist, they always use similar techniques on the stage to just seemingly pull the information right out of a volunteer's minds. In a stage routine, that's harmless fun, but in a criminal interrogation, it's pretty sinister, so. False confessions were an issue even in the earliest days of polygraphs, and nothing its developers tried could remove the risk. Disillusionment, both with the technology's limits and with law enforcement's ability to solve crime, is a thread through the lives of three major figures in Katwala's book. Berkeley Police Chief August Vollmer, Berkeley psychologist turned police officer John Larson, who invented the device, and Larson's teenaged assistant Leonard Keeler, who later developed it further. Keeler became the machine's keenest advocate, eventually hoping to patent and market it to law enforcement and civilian organizations. Nonetheless, even he came to see its flaws and potential for abuse. Now, a guy they don't mention is called Cleve Baxter. He was the big guy in the FBI who was pushing it. And Baxter was on all these cases and insisting that the polygraph could detect lies. He also insisted that the polygraph could prove that plants had feelings. He would hook the polygraph up to plants and then be mean to them and yell at them. Oh, they reacted negatively, or then, do something soothing to them. Oh, they reacted positively. Yeah. Yep. Of course, none of his experiments were controlled. Anytime someone else tried to replicate it, they didn't find any effect, so J. Edgar Hoover was head of the FBI at the time, and he declared that the polygraph was a waste of time and banned the FBI from using it, so. And the article says Katwala, who states firmly that the polygraph does not work, in the final chapter, he explores modern lie detecting variants based on eye movement tracking. If your eye goes up and to the left, that means you're lying and stuff like that. Or fMRI scans. Spoiler alert, they don't work either. There just doesn't seem to be any sort of like special thing that the brain does when you lie. It is just all sorts of things going together. A lot of formulating a lie is very similar to reconstructing a memory, and neurologists just poo-poo the entire idea of lie detecting. Because the brain just doesn't work that way. And so they talk about the CSI effect, with fictional high-tech detectives shaping how the public expects the police to work with advanced, completely accurate technology. Juries like blue light photos and DNA evidence. The more sciencey, the better. As forms of supposedly scientific proof, such as handwriting analysis, and we've talked about other things too. I think we talked about the footprint analysis. And just a bunch of other stuff too, shoe print analysis, all sorts of things. Handwriting analysis, by the way, is a couple of different things. One of which is suspect and the other is completely bogus. The completely bogus one is you can tell someone's personality by the swoops that they're, not the first bit of truth of that. The other is just trying to say, was this written by the same person? And it's based on things like which stroke was made first and then the next one. And so like, is this signature verified? And that's a little better, but it's still not the complete 100% accurate thing they make it out to be. There's a lot of interpretation involved, so. All of these have come under suspicion for being more speculative than we were told. The desire persists for a technique that reveals the truth in the human heart. The polygraph and its modern variants won't be going away anytime soon. But they have ruined a lot of innocent lives. I mean, not just the random guy they've just pulled in and coerced a confession out of. You have David King. He was a 20-year veteran of the U.S. Navy. He found himself under suspicion of selling classified information. He was held in prison for 500 days. That's a year and 4 months. They held him there, subjected him to polygraph interrogations, many of which lasted as long as 19 hours. A military judge then dismissed all the charges against him. And another is career FBI agent Mark Mulla. He suddenly found his office, his home, and his personal effects searched, and an audit of all his correspondence, based solely on the result of a positive result on his polygraph test. There was no evidence of wrongdoing ever found. Mulla had his FBI badge restored, but that cloud of suspicion hung over him the rest of his career. And so this isn't like a fun little thing. This isn't like an amazing, tool for investigation. It's a horrible piece of pseudoscience that ruins lives. And I mean, when you see these things on shows like, CSI or Law and Order, the polygraph, the handwriting analysis, where we're, checking out the paper that something was written on and where it came from and doing all these scientific analyses, I'll go ahead and tell you, almost all of them are completely bogus. And even if there is a way to make them scientifically valid, they're not following that way. They're not doing it in a way that would actually make it scientifically valid. And that's what it's all about. They don't care if they're innocent or not. They just care about getting convictions. And that's what you have to keep in mind. That's all they care about. They're not the good guys fighting the bad guys. They're just a bunch of fascists trying to put as many people in prison as they can. And they don't care about anything else. So That's the lesson today. Thank you so much for watching. Comments for the comment god, shares for the share throne. Please hit like, subscribe, and the bell. Get this information out there because, as usual, my videos are generally shadow banned, so this one probably will be too. So get this one around. This is the kind of thing that people need to know. And also, if you want to keep me doing what I do, go to donate.bogosity.tv where you can give with PayPal or crypto. You can become a supporter at Patreon or Subscribestar, get these videos early and ad-free, and all sorts of other benefits too. So please go check that out. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, stay strong and be free.